wall.
Yes.
The drywall mud over there.
Well, and floors and acoustic ceilings.
Matt.
Wow.
Did you have popcorn ceilings like that house?
No.
That's tough.
Only 24 grand for that.
You like it, that's all it was. Well, welcome to the budget committee meeting. Thank you all for being here. And we're ready to roll at 11. Heather, if you'll take roll call.
Could you give me one, two, please?
Director Saxon.
Here.
Director Lovell.
Yes.
Director Hudson.
Here.
Director Fleck.
Present.
Director Hensley. Director Keating.
Here.
Director Johnson.
Here.
Director Palmer. Director Pictionary.
Yep.
Barkin. Kenyon.
Here.
Manose. Here. Metzler.
Here.
Rue.
Here.
Funk.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, so we're here. Let's, do we have everybody a chance to review the minutes of the April 11th meeting? And I'll entertain a motion to.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Okay, great. We have motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We got you. Thank you. All right. We're into budget discussion.
Thank you. So my plan for our hour was to be very open to questions and considerations and comments, walk through the budget sort of as the budget committee desired. To start though, I did want to go over some of the changes that we proposed or put into the proposed budget from the last time we met. This comes from Christina and I, as we have taken ownership of this work with Susanna going on medical leave, who put a lot of the budget together, recognizing some changes that would be really helpful to us as we got into the next fiscal year. So I emailed out what those changes were, which are reflected in the proposed budget here on the table. Those things to start is first is adding $35,000 to the contracted service budget, which is for an employee resource and operational effectiveness consultant. Lori Kivith is that consultant who we have brought on board last week for this current fiscal year with our budget allows. But seeing her support as very important and helpful as we move into the new fiscal year. So wanting to allocate for that so we can continue to benefit from that support. The other item that we did is we moved $2,500 from an office supply lines into a new GL code that we created. This was called Staff Volunteer and Appreciation. And what this is this is recognizing that any sort of spending regarding food is something that our EPA support or federal dollars is not something that we should do. And so making this change allows us to separate those items a little bit more. So it's cleaner for our showing of how we're spending the money when we're reporting to the EPA. And then the final thing is adding a little over $48,000 into a new also line item of rent and office storage. This is to cover any storage or temporary office space that we may need as we undergo our capital improvement project for the remodel. So I'll stop there so we can go through those with some follow-up questions, but yeah.
So I noticed one additional, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I did notice one additional change. It looks like our contract services went from 77,600 to 112,600. So that was another change.
That was the first one they mentioned. We just mentioned it as adding to that line item.
Oh,
So it's not a new line item, it's just an increase.
I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom who have a question?
I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll just mention though that on the employee resource and operational effectiveness consultant, her name is Lori. She joins us 2 days a week and she comes from the city of Eugene with her career. And in my experience with her as someone who's very new to sort of this role of acting director has been very helpful to me even just from a leadership coach perspective. And I see her as a real strong resource moving into the next fiscal year. So just wanted to take an opportunity to mention that.
I would agree. She started doing leadership coaching with me as well, just as the new kid on the block to make that transition the most effective as possible. And she really is good at her stuff. So I'm really pleased with who we selected to bring on for that.
And want to thank Brian for, I think he was the first point of contact for putting us in touch with Lori, saying, hey, here's someone who could be a resource. And so we followed that road, and the result is we're at today. So just want to take some time to emphasize that.
3 cheers for Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
So then
That's
next, we also, in that email I sent out earlier, some of it was review of earlier information that we sent as well, sort of keeping with a tradition that LRAPA has done for a long time of the Friday questions. Any questions that we had during last budget meeting or any additional questions that were provided to us in writing. What we intend of going through those kind of more one by one and answering them more fully here in person with everybody. And then where that discussion leads us, I think could be helpful and productive. Christina, did you want to kind of start on some of those?
I think we emailed these out as well, but we just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to have more conversation on it if need be. During the presentation last month, there was a question, I don't remember who asked about if we had enough budgeted in the PERS line item for the growth over the
That was
next
me.
fiscal year. Okay. And we do, in Susanna's worksheet, in her notes, she had that she was doing 11% increase is what she projected it would be, but she actually, just to be safe, buffered it to 37% increase. I was unable to really understand why she increased it so much, but I think that will give us a year of figuring out the reality of the situation. So I opted to leave it there instead of reducing it back down to just 11%. Does anybody have any questions about that? And then we'll correct it for next year with whatever reality shows us is how that's gonna shake out. Okay. Then the second question was also sort of about those retirement plans. How do we reflect the current liability for the Voya retirement plans and the PERS retirement plans? So these line items roll up into current liabilities on our balance sheet in one category. The category includes all of LRAPA's liabilities aside from the compensated leave balances. So it is reflected in our balance sheet, but it's rolled up into one line item. The current balance sheet unaudited in our accounting software shows that liability is currently listed at 13,690. But in addition to that, we have on the budget expense line items, we also have 2 line items, PERS and Voya. And as of 2/29, which is when I was answering this question, those 2 line items are 75,000 and 5,000 respectively. So we're showing the expense as we're paying it on the P&L or the statement of financial position, but on the balance sheet, there's also a liability, and I think we true that up once a year. The same way we do with paid leave. We true that up once a year instead of adjusting it every month. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have an unrelated question. Our local partner dues, I mean, they're all in the process of getting their FY25 budgets finalized. And I guess the question is, do we have any insight as to whether what's proposed in the budget will actually be reality when our partners finalize their budgets?
Yeah,
next year?
that's a good question. And that is one where in the very short term, some conversations with the partners is sort of hot on the agenda, introducing, saying the new executive director, I think, will have opportunity to really make introductions more formally and explore that conversation on partner dues with the city of Eugene and their support. There's more confidence of that number that's in the budget because there already have been some outreach from the city of Eugene and some communication on what expectation should be. For the other partners, that is an effort that still needs to be paid.
Thank you.
Thanks. You want to?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So related to what he just spoke about, I know that Springfield has a formula. And the formula is that we would pay any increases matching that of what our revenue increases were for that year.
Okay.
And so, and not a penny more. And so, it's gonna be difficult, or how you have set here on the documents, I think you have it set at what, 3.5%?
I think so, yes.
So if our revenues increase by 2.5%, then you can
Right.
expect that.
I see. Okay. When will those numbers be apparent?
I'm in the middle of checking, actually.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. I didn't know when they sort of published what the revenues were for the previous year.
Yeah, I'm checking with my finance director right now.
Awesome, thank you. In addition to those questions that we had during the presentation last month, over email, Mike sent in some questions, of his own, and they're listed here. I don't know that we need to read them all out loud, but it was in the.
Surprise.
Well, I was surprised it was only 7, to be honest. Because when we were in the meeting,
We love you, Mike. Thank you.
well, in the meeting, he said, I have questions about each line item. So when it came back with only 7 questions, I was thrilled. But he did ask about what kind of things were in this computer software. This would be, I don't think you guys have this printed out. It was on the email when we sent, but it's just a list of all the different software that we kind of have in the agency. And the further we get into the future, the more software expenses just start to increase across every industry. So that's that. The audit fees, I thought this was a valid question. I do kind of want to review it. He asked, why do they vary so much from year to year? And I honestly think it's the timing of the invoicing hitting, whether it's hitting the correct fiscal year. I will make an effort to post future invoices to whatever year the cost was incurred, because that's the correct way to do it.
That's accrual accounting is.
Yes, yeah, so I will get that fixed going forward, but I unfortunately can't get it fixed in the past. So you would post the invoice to the period that the cost was incurred, even if you don't make the payment until the following year. So we'll get that fixed going forward, but I think that's what we're seeing there.
And I'll just want to add just a bit of some kudos to Christina, who's someone in the acting chair at the moment. These are all very new topics to me and things that I'm having to have a crash course on. And Christina's been very patient in helping to explain things like crew counting and why it matters and what's important, what it actually means. So that, because those are important things to have an understanding of. So thank you.
Oh, you're
And your
welcome.
patience in helping to walk me through those ideas.
No problem. Yes,
3.2.
3.2.
Yep.
Tell me more. I'm not following you.
3.2% increase.
Oh,
Increase from
okay,
last
okay.
year.
So that's really close. I was still thinking about audit fees. I was like, what?
Very close.
So we're really close to being able to ask for
Right,
the
because
full
audit
amount.
is- Assume that through pretty much the region is tax increase or tax revenue increases to the partners
Right,
that are gonna be probably right around 3.2%.
okay, that's good to know.
Depend on how much development they have.
There's a lot of depends, everything depends on everything, but
Yeah,
generally speaking, 3.2 is what we're experiencing.
okay, thank you so much for that. Though, Mike also had a question about the lab supplies, just reminding everyone that anything less than $5,000 goes into the supplies line item, and if it's more than 5,000, it's considered a piece of equipment and is under a different category. So luckily, most of the things we need to buy for our lab fall in the supplies category these days, unless we have to replace a big piece of equipment or something. And then the next one was for contracted services. What all does this include? So we did talk about, it includes sort of that HR help that we were describing with Lori. And then also, a consultant who specializes in Cassell, who is helping us to resolve some implementation issues that we had, and we had some data entry errors that were caused due to sort of a lack of being ready to use the new software. So we're still unfortunately working on cleaning that up. And then Karis Consulting, I don't know if we'll continue to have any fees in the next fiscal year, but that's the kind of thing that fits in this category. HR Answers was another one in there. And if we have any temporary employment agency costs that may arise, so the fees that we pay that are for the hours that a temp would work are salaried, but the fees to the agency are contracted services.
And I'll chime in there. Susanna in her interim role made good use of temp hires and the need to support the organization through some transition. And we actually, Heather was someone who we got out of that. Carissa is another person who we were able to hire through temps. That was very effective in getting us some very good, solid individuals. We do have some openings though, at the moment, and our process has not been to use the temp hire. That has been more of the traditional approach because that temp approach does have a higher cost associated with it. So an inspector position that we're hiring right now, that was done through more of a traditional method of posting to job boards. We have a permit writer to replace Kelly Conlon, who retired, and we talked about that at the last board meeting. That also is going through more of a traditional approach, and I do think that future hires are likely to take more of that traditional approach to save on some of that cost.
Then,
One sec.
oh, go ahead.
Where do the recurring Cassell cost? What are
There's
they?
actually a line item for financial software.
Okay.
Let me go look at it really quick. Yes, so there's computer software and then there's a separate financial software. And it includes more than just Cassell. There's a couple other little pieces of software that we use for financial, for our financial department. And so all of that adds up to a hefty price of 32,000, but.
Okay.
One of the things on Cassell too, that is a component that we had to make a decision of, that was made last year, is do we host our data virtually in-house or does it go in the cloud? We took the cloud approach, which has a little bit of a higher month-to-month cost. But a benefit of that though that we're seeing is just this last week, we discovered Colleen, who she's not here at the moment, but we found that the way Cassell was reporting accrued leave was there was a bug in it. And Cassell recognized that was a bug and they said, oh, patch is coming out next week. And so the cloud approach, that is just implemented like right away. As or if it was on our servers, there would be more hoops to jump through to have that bug be fixed from Cassell, so.
And all of those software upgrades throughout the year do not cost us extra. So it's sort of all encompassing. Also, we have unlimited help support.
Yeah.
So if we have a training issue, we can't figure out how to do something in Cassell, we can call, we get pretty much free one-on-one training. And then if we have a bug that we see or some kind of data that we need corrected from the back end, all of that is free. There's no add-on charges for that. So that's been very handy and I have been using that. They probably are thinking twice about whether that should be all included or not, but yeah. It's been a wonderful resource. So, but if there's no more questions about that one, I'll move on to the next one. The grant services pass through, that is kind of a contra account for the AirQuest revenue item. So the last revenue item under intergovernmental is it's actually part of the 105 base grant, but we separated it out for tracking purposes. We didn't used to, but we are now. And so that will bring in 420,000 this year and we expect to spend 420,000. You know, it's just a pass through. However, we left it at, it looks like the previous year's level of 340. I'm unclear if we get a portion of that as sort of like administrative maintenance fee that we get to collect. So I still have to do some research on that. So I did want to leave the expenses at the 340, even though the revenue is 420, because I do think that means we get to take that fee as like we're managing that contract. But I don't want to promise you that. I'm still researching it. So that's new to me.
And some context that I can provide just on what Northwest AirQuest is. So that is essentially a computer model, forecasting model that has a little bit more emphasis on smoke forecasting, which is relevant during wildfire season. And where's the smoke coming from? How much are these wildfires producing? And where is that smoke going to go with the current weather? So it's universities up in Washington that put together this model and run it on a daily basis. It's something that the EPA is very much in support of, but they need to find a mechanism to subaward that money to the universities to do this work. And LRAPA is the mechanism that subawards that. So it is a service that we provide to the EPA Region 10, which they are very appreciative of and are thankful for that effort for us, though it does complicate audits and other things on our end. And one of the items that Susanna last year was working on was engaging with them to try to make sure that from an administrative perspective, our resources are being protected that way. So I do think there's a component of that we'll be able to get, but not sure what that is at this moment.
And then the next one is travel. Why is it so high? Because we are really ramping up our staff training. It's kind of been a little lacking in the last couple of years, so we're putting a focus back on that staff training. And where a lot of the training doesn't have a huge training registration expense, there's always the travel that goes along with it. So that's why our travel line item is higher than the training line item might look like it would support, because a lot of those trainings are actually free to us, but the travel is not, obviously. And then capital building improvements, just there was needing some clarification on the full capital amount versus how much was for the actual remodel. And so the 1.19 million is the actual remodel. The rest of it are other line items. So let me go to that and see. 100,000 would be for furnishings. And then 130 is for capital operations software system. And 10 is capital monitoring equipment. Remember when I said we, anything under 5,000 is considered lab supplies. Anything over 5,000 is considered monitoring equipment under the capital line item. So that all of that added together is 1.4 million. But the remodel itself is still just the 1.19 million. Yeah.
Yeah. go
So,
ahead.
so this is where I have some real heartburn. You know, I really appreciate all the answers, but you know, the board never actually approved this project. And I don't feel good about that, especially when we're coming in with numbers in the budget that are more than we were hearing, you know, in a process where we weren't asked for approval.
I
to
guess
do the
I
project.
thought the board did approve the project, but of course I wasn't here then, so.
I don't ever remember seeing a budget. Do you remember anybody seeing the budget?
We saw
We saw some plans.
we saw the plans, we saw the proposals and some of the ideas of what they'll do, such as the modeling of the building, et cetera, but I don't recall seeing any final budget.
And so there's also the procurement part of it that worries me, because I mean, these are tall dollars, and if we've not had a formal process for approving, you know, a not to exceed amount and getting, you know, a formal bid process, I'm a little worried about us as far as that stuff goes, so.
You know probably some about this, don't you? Weren't you part of that conversation?
I do remember. I don't remember the whole approval. I remember probably the spending the metrics money was approved, but maybe
Right.
not the project itself.
Right.
Okay, so it's been allocating the.
Allocating. the
Air
money
metrics
yeah,
to
the
go.
project
So,
itself.
and this
But I
is,
remember a conversation in regards to putting out RFPs. And I do remember that there was some RFPs out there for that, but I don't know if it was an RFP for the entire project or if it was for the paving or the windows or
Right.
whatever.
We have not sent out the RFPs for the big project yet. That'll be going out at the end of May, towards the end of May, right?
Yes, the GMA, they're in a place of finalizing the final construction bid projects and then going out for bid ideally in May. The January or the December board meeting, there was a discussion of how we finance this.
Right.
And the language in the motion was to move forward with the budget or the rebuilding project. So
Yeah,
how
I
you,
think that what came out of that with me was that we're not going to borrow.
Right,
We just spend what we have and stay within our own means.
right,
And that the modeling I saw was a theoretical design. So we're still a little ahead of the curve, I think, on the RFP process.
But we had $1 million and now the costs are half again more. And this is where I'm having my heartburn, you know, so basically, well, the 1.4 million is not quite half again more. You know, and so I guess what I expect is when the board is approving amounts is that there is an actual, you know, dollar amount not to exceed, that if they are exceeding it, they come back for approval for that change. And I'm not trying to beat anybody up here, but just kind of stay, you know, say what I expect in the future as far as this sort of thing. I know that in my financial plan as an agency, it's like 16 pages long and 8 of them are on procurement. And so I just want us to be very careful as a small agency to make sure that we're following, you know, those, you know, circulars and making sure that we're, you know, following, you know, government procurement process. But also the fact that if there are overruns, that the board's aware of it. You know, and so I will share, you know, that I went along with it at first. I guess I wish I would have at that point said, I want to see a hard budget and,
Right,
you know.
and I see what you're saying is half again is more because I was a little surprised by seeing the software system cost. That's the first I've heard of that.
Right.
May not have been the first it said, but it's the first I recognized. And
Right.
so that's 130,000. And I see that the furnishings weren't mentioned in previous conversations as well. So that's 200, and that's almost $250,000 that I wasn't aware of as part of the project. But then this is also just a capital outlay, generally speaking. So I agree with what you're saying. We're at 1.4. I don't know what we're getting for the software. I haven't heard anything about it, didn't know we needed it, didn't know what we're using now, if it needs to be replaced, didn't hear anything about that, and that's a big chunk. And then again, the furnishings, 100 grand it's a lot of desks. We got, what, 19 people? So,
and if I
Just go
Uh,
ahead,
absolutely.
respond.
So I
Thanks, Joe.
understand and very much appreciate the perspective. I mean, that's the whole point of the board is to say, hey, we're here to make sure that the public money is being used in a way that has that oversight. And so I appreciate that perspective. And to get into sort of the specifics of the interior remodel, so that 1.29 still is accounting for, I think, what the discussion was back in December on the amount of it. So from our end and from my perspective, there hasn't been an escalation of here's what the information that's been shared with the board. The amount that's here is accounting for a 15% potential change to that. So take home kind of from the conversation here for myself moving forward is having more of a direct communication with the board on those specific fine numbers. The operation software system, that is for our database, which is a program, Linfo, is an item that has been in development with LCOG over the last number of years. And it's been a slow development. That's only because we've been budgeting about $15,000 a year towards Linfo to help us build this. This in the budget here is an attempt or a request, I guess you could say, to use money to expedite that process from a slow building of this tool that is important to LRAPA and how we manage our data and how we're able to look at the information we have and make decisions on it, to bring that to a place that can more effectively help us manage our data. So the communication on that, I definitely can recognize is maybe not as forward-looking as it ought to be and should be. And then the monitoring equipment, that's more of a standard allocation every year that we would see for upgrading monitoring equipment and those type items.
So go ahead, thanks.
Well, since if you're going out for bids, I guess at the end of the month, is it about 30 days? Is that how long you're giving for
The
response?
turnaround time, yeah, I think probably.
So by the July meeting, you'll have bids, I assume.
Yeah.
So at that point, we'll have real numbers and maybe the board may want to weigh in
Yeah,
on whether to agree to that. Because we don't have any idea where those numbers are gonna be.
right.
We all know that construction costs have gone up a lot, legal costs have gone up.
Living that right now.
And so it's,
I will say that we did have the legal team review the RFP packet and the accompanying documents to make sure we were meeting all the requirements of what we needed to meet.
Right.
So, as a matter of fact, as part of that process, they replaced some of the boilerplate material that the architects had provided with their own, from our legal team to make sure that it was meeting the requirements we needed it to meet. So we're not shooting in the dark, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
and is it gonna be a firm fixed price or is it gonna be a cost not to exceed or what's the,
I haven't looked at that myself,
Okay.
so.
I don't actually have an insight into
Okay.
that as well. So
I'd be interested to know what the contract terms would be.
Right, Mike.
And I'm sorry, I'll try to be quick, guys. So how much was the money that we were transferring? I'm not seeing it very quick, from, oh, here it is, closed funds. So it was
52.
1,152, 153.
And it's continuing to grow because a large portion of that, more than 500,000 of that is invested in a LGIP account that is continuing to grow. And we're not gonna pull that over until we have to. So it's continuing to grow at about $2,500 a month, which I know when you're looking at $1 million, that's not much, but it is continuing to grow.
So are we making up the difference then just out of our general fund ending?
Reserves, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
But our reserves do continue to stay at 6 months or greater. So even with dipping into the reserves a little bit, it's not damaging our base reserves.
And did you update your forecasting? Sorry. Go ahead.
Which part of the forecasting are you, with the changes
5-year?
to the budget? Yes, yeah, I did. I updated anything that would have been affected by the changes we made in the budget. So, the consolidated schedules are updated as well, and so is the forecasting tool.
Thank you. I really do appreciate your guys'.
Oh, you're welcome. No, it's
It's
great.
important to know that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot after the fact, you know, that we regret remodeling because things got out of
Right.
control with the budget. And so I appreciate the input.
So you mentioned RFPs are going out, I think you said within 30 days, and that the capital outlay projects here have been reviewed by the legal team. Has the legal team determined that the RFPs are in keeping with decisions that the board has made as shown in the minutes?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Ask it one more time. I can
Well,
remember.
RFPs are going out, and if I heard correctly, you said that the legal team has looked at
The RFP.
the RFPs. And the board made a decision, as I understand it, I wasn't here then, about what the outlay should be. Has the legal team determined that those are both in keeping with each other?
So you mean the not to exceed amounts?
Yes.
I would need to look into that. I don't honestly know the answer to that.
yeah, and the RFPs they're not to be issued in the next 30 days. We will issue the RFP and then it will be a 30-day solicitation period for an
Bids.
ability to respond to those RFPs. So the expectation is that those RFPs in the mid to end of May, that's when those will be issued.
Like
The-
the announcement will be made.
Right, saying, hey, we are looking to do this work. We're looking for contractors, who are interested in this work. And that will be open for solicitation for 30 days. So that's when that process will happen. And that will start here at the middle to end of May. So then come the July meeting, as Howard was saying, that will be when we'll have much more of an opportunity to say, here is what the respondents to those RFPs are. The board have an opportunity to look at those items and say, okay, what makes most sense for the organization moving forward?
Travis, does LRAPA have their own procurement manual or do we just defer to the RRS? Do you know?
We have a procurement manual. We do, yes.
Okay, and it's current. I mean, we've kept it current. So, because I know there've been some changes to the RRS, so I guess we need to Make
No.
sure they marry up.
We need to marry those up for sure. I have not done that yet. And I don't know off the top of my head when the last time we revised our procurement manual, but I have a copy of it on my desk. I just haven't analyzed it yet.
Yeah,
2020, okay. So it's time
that's
to
not
do that.
bad. The-
Howard.
Well, not to get into the weeds here, but I guess I'll be curious as to, once you get the bids, you know, what the evaluation process is. Is it just low bid, or is it, you know, do you do a qualitative analysis to make sure they're responsive, you know, things like that? And I don't know, I haven't seen the procurement manual.
That might be in the
Should-
procurement manual.
Yeah,
Sure it
so,
I
is.
would think so.
but I'd be interested in that. Put my old fiddle contractor hat on.
It still fits, Howard.
I'm sure it does.
I'll put on my nonprofit.
I've been trained, I was trained for many
grant
years.
Funded hat, that if I understand correctly, the beauty of funding of this project is you're not looking at grant funds. And you're
Right.
not looking at loaned funds. So there's a lot more flexibility in how you award and how you pay for
Mhm.
projects. I know there's what you do as an organization guidelines, but the money itself
We're not beholden to
is a
someone
little,
else.
is not dedicated in certain ways with restrictions.
And that strong recommendation to take that approach came from David in the December meeting, because the question up was to the board of what, you know, avenue do we want to
Yeah.
take to fund this, and saying if we can have the flexibility, that's a better approach to go, so.
And that's where that 1.9 started from, was just the funds you had available, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Any other questions?
A question on a different topic, going backwards, actually. Could you give I guess a PERS 101 for folks who were not on this board when that decision was made? I guess as far as when specifically, like who determines what LRAPA pays and when those payments are made and when liabilities are accrued as well?
I sure do wish Colleen was here to help us tap into that question. Oh, she is.
I can allow her to talk.
Yeah, let's allow her to talk. Let's make sure she's
Talk ready.
ready, yeah. Colleen, not to put you on the spot. It looks like you're still muted, but would you be able to answer that question about the PERS?
Can you say the question one more time?
Well, I was hoping, I guess, for a crash course intro in PERS, specifically as far as who determines what LRAPA pays and when it's paid and when liabilities are accrued.
Well, when we do payroll, the employee pays in 6%, and then LRAPA pays the required amount that PERS tells us that we have to pay. And then after payroll is completed, then we forward it to PERS to be distributed into people's accounts.
So do you know off the top of your head what the percentage we're currently paying in? For PERS?
11.08%.
And then, want to understand that increases each year or every other, year, right?
Yes, every other year, yes.
And do you know what it increases to the first time?
When we started, I believe it was at 9.73 and it went to 11.08.
Well, and that's assuming you don't hire a tier 1 or 2 employee, because that's a completely different animal.
Yes.
And it's assuming the legislature doesn't go after that to make up for the retired 1s and 2s that are no longer paying into the system, which they've already done once.
That's correct.
And all of the current staffing is officer, which is not tier 3, but or I forget what it stands for, the OPSERP lower tier, which is at a different rate. But to your point, Mike, as there's less tier 1, tier 2s working, but there still is that liability that the state has, they're gonna have to look somewhere to support that. So, yeah.
And then I think it was a small amount, like $13,000. How is there? I'm just trying to think through how there's a liability created on the balance sheet if we're paying.
I really think that most of that liability is something to do with Voya, and I don't have my brain wrapped around it yet, so I can't answer that question. I don't know if Colleen would be able to on the balance sheet, when we have liabilities listed, do you
Mhm.
know how we calculate the retirement liability?
Well, in payroll, so we do still have some people that are on that stayed on Voya. So we have some in both. And that gets combined, but they get paid separately when we pay those transmittals. Because the Voya go to Voya. But there's also several people that have deferred comp and other Voya accounts that they have taken out of their payroll checks and get forwarded. That's not a LRAPA liability, just the employer portion of the retirement.
So I did notice that there was a liability being recorded, so I will get with our auditors this year before the audit and ask them for guidance on how to true that up. It may be that we don't need to carry a liability there. I just need to ask the auditors for advice on that, why they've carried it before and what that means.
Right.
So there's a given liability with PERS, and as part of that, LRAPA can participates in that given liability. That's part of it. And then part of it is the PERS continues to go backwards because of the way they calculate the liability and the future liability, how they discount it. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's a system that's just continually going backwards because they're just not getting enough.
Yep.
So that liability, we just got into that, and then so it just is going to accumulate. And I think that we should keep a fund to cover that so that at any given point, we're paid up. I may not give it to PERS, but we should keep it on the, otherwise, you know, in the future, you could have a huge liability that you've got to cover and you have no revenue or no funds to cover it.
So there's the potential for like a one-time payment, or there's the potential for the percentage to keep increasing?
No, but I mean, if you owe so much in a year and for some reason the revenue drops and you've still got that to pay, you could pull it out of that contingency or cough it up and cancel something else.
Yeah, and I think that at a high level, it seems like it may be helpful to approve a budget with a balance sheet next to it. Like that seems a little bit strange to not have a look at what the liabilities are on the balance sheet. That seems like a contextual information. That's kind of a high level idea for maybe not this round, but in the future.
But most jurisdictions don't do that. In fact, I don't know of any that do.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to know what liabilities are on the balance. And I know that we have it.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that we
Right.
have that from the auditors, but it
Right.
may just be helpful to kind of have that whole it's the whole financial picture of the organization. The balance sheet's an important piece of that.
Just maybe next year I can include it as just a appendix item.
Yeah.
Have it in
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and Susanna did have those details and she had the percentages, then how much they were going up over the next few years. So I know that she had that information.
So I'll
Before
make
she-
a note to include the balance sheet, the most recent audited balance sheet in the next year's, just like as a appendix item.
Mhm.
Thank you. And thank you, Colleen. That was helpful.
So question, so it is atypical for public entities to keep a balance, isn't that correct?
No, just that they may also have that, but in fact, I'm trying to remember, GASB, I think requires them, all their facilities like streets, they actually have to have a value on now, but that's not usually part of the budget process. Cause that's such a huge, in other jurisdictions, that's a massive, massive document, and so you wouldn't include that. You know,
I mean, so it PERS is that a given organization, the city of Springfield has a liability. That's not on any kind, there's no fund to back that up within the city, correct?
There's back doors. I mean, as far as there's contingency funds and there's.
Right, but that's not,
But those contingency funds are used for multiple items.
right, and not related to the PERS liability.
Not dedicated to PERS, but they're would be there in case PERS does a slip up of some sort. There's always a contingency fund. That's the 180-day
Right.
fund that we carry already.
But my point is for LRAPA to keep a fund equal to or close to the PERS liability, that's not typical.
No.
No, in fact, our city years back did buy down their unfunded liability, so with tier 1 and 2, if the market goes down as well, there's actually even a bigger
Mhm.
liability that cities, our payroll now is over 30%. For most employees as far as the PERS piece, and they pay that every year. But at one point, they did take a loan and buy it down, because it was cheaper to do it that way, than it was to, so it can be done.
Max, is it?
Mike.
Mike, my perspective, because on budget committees and making budget decisions, I think the value of having a balance sheet and seeing what the agency is on the hook for, or what it has in its total fund picture to work with, helps with the decision-making process for this period of time. Can we take the risk? Do we have backups? Or is there funds available to commit if needed? We're flying blind a bit in making decisions if we don't know that information. And hopefully there's a executive summary that just gives us an idea of all the money without all the detail, just as an information piece.
Doesn't the budget have a forecast on per? I mean, I'm looking at that.
Yeah.
So
It is
it's a-
forecasted out.
Yeah.
Well, and your beginning and ending fund balances are also a good indication of where your reserves are at. So I mean, even though you're not seeing a balance sheet, the key pieces I look at in a fund are gonna be your beginning balance, your contingency and ending balance numbers. Those are gonna tell you kind of the health of that fund. And I'm not suggesting in a small organization, it's a bad idea, because it's actually not a big deal to create one for our level.
Sure.
So I think that's a
I
wonderful idea.
just for
Yeah.
somebody who's not enmeshed in the information as deeply as the experienced ones, this just gives an idea of how that looks without trying to interpret.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an easy thing to add to the budget book next year, so the most recent audited financial statements can be added pretty easily, and I think that's a good decision, a good piece of advice, so.
Hey, any other questions?
Well, there was one more, it's the very last one,
Oh, right.
let me get back to it.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yes, thank you, Colleen. There was a question about the Title V. It says the wages are increasing, but the budget book states that the operations department is reducing staff from 8 to 6. And I just wanted to clarify, we're not actually reducing staff across the organization. We just realigned our org chart. So those staff report to Lance instead of Max. And but their salaries are largely funded by Title V, and they continue to be. The work they're doing is the same. The way we're allocating it across grants or some funding sources is the same. They just report to a different manager, so.
So my perception in that was that we actually had moved them from Title V to the general fund, which is
No.
why I was wondering why the
Right.
numbers hadn't changed if we were actually
Right.
allocating them into a different.
Right, no.
Fund.
So their pay is still allocated much the same way it always has been. They just simply report to a different manager. To help align our workload at the office.
Joe?
So
Yeah.
it's all Title V related. I was kind of reading it in anticipation of this topic,
Okay.
which is a very hot button for me, for sure. First of all, when the state turns around and increases fees over a 2-year period by 83%. And it was initiated by a state department. And then piggyback, they found got the legislators to allow it and to offer it. And we had a director that went up unbeknownst to the board and testified on behalf of the LRAPA to endorse that. And then lo and behold, it got passed. And now we have a difference of, I had it here,
Page 25.
43% more this year.
yeah,
and that one
43 and
line.
40 next year. So now we got this, and we had conversations regarding, okay, what is LRAPA gonna do with these, in my mind, ill-begotten goods? And how is it going to be returned to the taxpayers or to the permit holders, I should say? Because they're getting nothing extra for it. They're not getting anything, but we did fund a state agency by 10 new positions with that money. So LRAPA, because of our marriage, we're joined at the hip with the state. We are seeing the benefits of this passage of that bill by way of an influx of a lot of dollars. And so now, but I'm looking at this and all of a sudden those dollars are spent. They're already allocated and they're going to help support our mission. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is our permit holders getting out of those extra payments? What is LRAPA? What extra is LRAPA giving our permittees? And is that an automatic, okay, we're just going to increase our size so we can suck up that money and do the same thing we've been doing? And so I've got a real heartache over, you can probably tell, real heartache over how this all transpired. But I think that LRAPA as an organization, I believe, should not be mirroring the attitude in which the state took and takes. And we turn right around and say, hey, we're just an innocent beneficiary. To me, that's inherently wrong when we're losing 11 to 15 Title V companies out of the state. And even in our region, within our region, is we're going to be losing businesses. And those were our employers. So how are we going to make that up? How are we going to make it right?
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit, Joe, and I definitely understand the thought of if we have this increase in this funding, you know, what is the benefit to the source or what is the benefit to the permit holders who are paying that? I would say that the initial need to increase those fees came from not looking to increase or to create more service. It was more to stabilize the fund that was essentially in dire straits for the state and even for LRAPA, our fund, which Mike over time, you know, was falling. And that was an effort to essentially balance out that fund, which does support a lot of the organization. But I think the question still has merit of, is this fee increase more so than what is actually needed to stabilize or to do that work? And so a question to be explored, you know, in the future, but I would say that for a large component of that was to stabilize a falling fund. And I can't speak to actions that were done in the past by the former director, but I do think that having the conversation with the board of where the fund is at for us internally, what the actual need is for us, and what are things that could be done from a getting with the legislature, from having conversation with the legislature of what that need is an important conversation to have with the board before action.
When you see our fund in 3 years ago, or that the monies for the Title V committees were at 416,000. This proposed budget has 775,000. It's almost double.
Yeah.
So our work hasn't doubled. I mean, I get the stabilization, but were we that far behind in 3 years ago by almost double?
My understanding is yes, we were. And when you compare to other component like Washington or even California, this increase, as my understanding is, this is bringing us up to that same level. So in terms of sources saying, well, this is now more of an expense to us, other states in comparison, it's now more on an equal basis as where Oregon was behind. And I think a challenge for Oregon and DEQ structure is they can't raise those fees without going to the legislature. And prior to that recent increase of that 83%, which they asked in the Oregon legislature, broken into two chunks of 43 and a 40%, the last time those fees were raised was in 2011. But costs have grown since 2011 without seeing those fees increase it. And that is one of the things that I think that DEQ takes their approach is large chunks of fee increases at once. An example being asbestos fee increases. DEQ's approach is over time, they will increase it significantly at once and then it stays level. As we're in our rule structure for asbestos fees, they're more incremental increases to make from the business community perspective. You know, it's important to recognize when you go to a business and say, we need more of your money to support ourselves, doing that in steps, I think, is a better way for that to be a more comfortable or navigatable thing than doing those.
I mean, which in itself is kind of funny because they're still like, the way they were kind enough to break it up, they're costing the permittees more. Because the first year it's a 40%, and now the second year they're paying 43% increase on the increased 40% fees. So it's costing, the way it's broke up, there, it's literally costing them more, but people think that that was a gift. And actually it was a financial smart move for the state.
The legislature, the request from DEQ was to do it all at once, and the legislature decided to change it to that.
We collect more money.
The-
So, anyway, I'm done. I had to let my.
Sean, we need to move on.
Yes, so is there any other questions related to the budget proposal that is critical for decision making? Are we ready for budget approval motion?
Madam Chair. I will move that the Budget Committee approve the budget as amended, or the current version, which is dated by 2/24.
So we have a motion to accept the proposed budget. Any second? We have Joe, missionary, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Wonderful.
So we're excited that, present this to the board for their consideration too. And I guess I get to thank our staff for a great budget process. And thank you to the committee members for participating.
Yes.
For
herding the cats.
Well, this was fun. I don't know, I think it was fun.
And if I could just chime in too, that I will say that a lot of the discussion here from myself, in this conversation for the first time, has been very insightful and has me a lot of notes here for the next time around, things that we can provide
Yeah.
to allow the budget committee to be more informed and prepared on these conversations.
I
It's
agree.
helpful.
I agree. Well, thank you for letting us serve you and
And just on
Yeah.
behalf of the board, I appreciate all the budget committee members volunteering and spending time. It's really very beneficial and appreciate all the input and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
all right. So meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My job.
Thank you.
And there is now pizza in the back too, so the budget committee, while the meeting may be over.
So. For you?
Yes.
So I am currently under investigation by the.
The microphones are hot.
That's okay. This is
Okay, sorry for the slight delay. Welcome to the May 9th, 2024 meeting of the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to now call it to order. Heather, would you call the roll, please?
Chair Saxon.
Here.
Vice Chair Lovall is excused. Director Cutchin.
Here.
Director Fleck.
present.
Director Hensley.
Here.
Director Keating.
Here, telephonically.
Director Johnston.
Here.
Director Plummer. And Director Pishner.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let the record reflect that we do have a quorum today. First off, are there any adjustments to today's agenda?
Yes, that letter, if you would like to add that to.
Yes, I'd like to add a letter of recognition, I guess, and we can do that under item 14, I guess. All right, are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward. First item on the agenda is public participation. Time limit is 3 minutes per speaker. Heather, is there anyone online that would like to speak?
We have staff present.
Okay. And there's no one in attendance in person, so there's no public comment on today's agenda, and there's no comments on a topic not on today's agenda. Moving on, comments from the board. Are there any comments from the board today? Okay, we'll be moving along quickly here. It is 12:20, so we're on schedule. I would like to now announce that the board will be going into an executive session in accordance with Oregon's Public Meetings Law. Elaine Regional Air Protection Agency's Board of Directors will now enter into an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602A for the purposes of considering the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Please note that no decisions will be made during the executive session. At the conclusion of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation.
Go ahead.
I just want to check, Matt, do you have access to the link for the other session?
I'm looking right now, Brian, and I can't find it.
It's on the agenda.
That's what I thought. And I
And I'm gonna
wait,
say-
Brian, if I text you, it means I can't find it. And if you see me, it means I'm on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Matt, I will email that link to you as well as I step out. I'll just send it your way.
Thanks.
Maybe me, but we're in executive session and we have people that are not. part
We
of
haven't
it.
adjourned yet.
We haven't adjourned yet.
Okay.
So
He was just announcing that we were going into executive.
there's a separate Zoom link for the executive session.
Okay, so we're not in executive session.
No.
No, we're
So-
about.
Yeah, and
I
just to
think
confirm,
seconds
Paul,
away.
I do see it. I'll see you on the executive session.
And let the record reflect there are no members of the news media. So I would now like to adjourn the regular LRAPA board meeting and go into the executive session. Okay, the board has left executive session, so I'd now like to call the regular LRAPA board meeting back into public session. So we will begin with the item number 6, appointment of executive director. And in the public packet was a draft contract that is proposed to be it's proposed for approval by the board. Maybe Kristen, if you'd like to lead any discussion with that.
Sure. So yes, there is a draft contract. So what we're looking for from the board is a motion to appoint Travis as the executive director, to authorize the contract that was included in the public packet, and to authorize the board chair to sign the employment contract. You can say so moved to that if you would like. And then after there's a second, if there's any discussion on the topic, including the contract, that would be the right time to do it.
So moved.
That's a move by Matt.
You were a little slow on the draw on that one.
Is there a second to approve the contract?
Take a breath for a second.
It's been seconded by Jared. It's been moved and seconded, so I'd like to now open. Is there any discussion on the proposal?
A couple points here on page 4. I'm looking at 3B. This isn't the version that I have. There's a part that says date.
Yes,
which I
I got
assume
that,
needs
yep,
to be
yep.
updated. Okay, so that was one that, the second question I had is on page 8, section 13, about notices being delivered by first-class mail or hand delivery. Is it customary to not deliver those by email? That would seem,
It is
Okay.
customary to require mail or hand delivery when a formal notice is required.
I think that's actually set in civil process for state or
Well,
OAR.
If you, it wouldn't be for this because it's for a contract. For other reasons it is. But yeah, that's standard.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's like a landlord reading that.
Is there any other discussion, comments about the draft contract? So, the one that was sent, that was available, to the public, does that have the corrected date or does that need to be corrected?
No, so there, it needs to be corrected, so I would say it's a non-substantive change. It, elsewhere, it noted that the probationary period would end in November, and if it went past there, the term of the contract would extend to May 10th. And then the 3B section that was noted, it just said date, comma, 2026, and May 10th needs to be entered there.
Okay,
So I will do that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll call for the question. All in favor of approving the draft contract as amended or corrected?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Do we need a roll call or anything for this or?
If you didn't have any opposed, you
There's
got
no
it.
opposed, so unanimous. Congratulations, Travis.
Thank you. I appreciate the board's vote of confidence. I want to recognize that it is a large role with great responsibility. Also that I'm very young to take on kind of a role in that responsibility. But in that, I do feel confident in the sense that I have people like Colleen and Lance and Max who have many years, 25 to 30 years with the organization. I've learned a lot from Christina in her background, even though she's also new to the organization. And that's looking at others who have their subject matter expertise and trusting them in that has been really served me well over time. So to that end, I feel like I have a good team.
I'd like to make a sort of a connected motion to this, so I could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to request the executive director create a job position description draft for the board to review and approve.
Been moved a job description.
Discussion, real quick discussion.
Is there a second to that?
Second that.
Oscar, I'm sorry,
Yeah, second.
Okay, second. Discussion?
just a quick topic on, is someone going to assist him or is there gonna be things that someone should talk with Travis in regards to trying to make sure that these items are included? Or are we gonna just have him do a shot in the dark and then we'll do it later?
I can follow up with him if that would be helpful.
That would be helpful,
Okay.
probably.
And as board chair, obviously willing and able to help from a board perspective on expectations that we would have.
And there might very well already be a position description somewhere, but
Yeah.
it gets you along the way.
We have one, but it would be good to give it a review and I think assessing it for the current needs and circumstances of the agency and situation there's some updates that would be appropriate.
Awesome. Yep.
Any other further comments, discussions? It's been moved and seconded that the board directs the executive director to develop a job description. Make sure you review the job description very well before you're formally accepted.
It's too late. I'm ready to vote.
All right, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I think
All
that
right,
was a
well-
delay. I don't think that was.
I was late on the draw. That's an affirmative. Aye.
Slow on the trigger again, man.
I heard it as an aye, not an nay, so.
You're
So-
fun to tease, man.
I'll make that one change to the contract
Okay.
and then we will circulate it first to Travis and then it has signing spot for the chair and vice chair. I know the vice chair is absent, but is he available to sign the contract?
Well, we might, we talked a little bit before the meeting that we could do it DocuSign electronically.
Correct. I can do that from my office. it
Yeah,
won't
so we
go
could
by-
do that.
Okay, so we'll do that and get it circulated.
Yep, so we'll get that official. Okay, great. All right, well, anyway, we look forward to working with you, Travis, and
Do we want the job description to have the same signatures?
It won't have a signature, so it's just gonna be a document that
Right.
Travis prepares for the future board meeting and it'll be on the agenda and the board will review it and then can accept.
It's not like an agreement, that's just.
Correct,
Right.
yeah, and I'll follow up with Travis to give him some more direction.
Right on.
Okay,
all right.
you're welcome.
As
you very
always,
much.
Kristen, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome,
I look forward to dealing with Blake tomorrow.
bright and early tomorrow morning.
Well, today was Blake's birthday, so he had, I guess, a valid excuse
That's even
for,
more reason to
And
see
then I
Blake.
are-
tomorrow.
even though I told him, we were gonna provide pizza and everything for his birthday, but, anyway, didn't buy
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
All right,
Have a
thank
nice
you very much. Well, let's move on now. Consent agenda, there's two items here. First is approval of the minutes of the board's April 11th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion and second to approve the minutes?
Wasn't here.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, any corrections to the April 11th minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. All opposed? It's approved. Second item is approval of the financial report from March 2024.
Actually, it would have been February 2024. We're always lagging by a month.
Okay,
And I'm not seeing those.
was that in the board packet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it didn't end up in my copy, I guess.
What page you at, Mike?
I have a copy of it I can share with somebody if someone wants to look at it.
That's my bad. I apologize. Not my whole that happened.
Well, that's okay. I read it online, so I'm sure I looked at it. I just may abstain because I don't remember.
Do we need to defer this?
We can push it till next month. Here is what is that
That's
financial
a copy of
statement.
last month's report, which would have been through the end of February. We lag by a month so we can close the books out, make sure we have everything posted.
We deferred.
Let's defer since not everybody's had an opportunity to look at that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, is Jim Daniels on?
I see him. Oh, he was? No, there he is.
Welcome, Jim. We're ready for the Citizens Advisory Committee report. And you're on mute. There you go.
Okay, yeah, sorry about the delay.
No problem.
So in our last meeting, we discussed more about our interview process, and I think we've exhausted that topic now. Also, my term ended in April, and so I have reapplied. The committee discussed it without my input, and it's being referred to you now to renew my membership in the committee. So I don't know if you want to take that up now or.
Yes, you're a glutton for punishment, but thank you for reapplying. No, really appreciate that. Mike,
Yeah, I'll move that we reappoint Jim Daniels to the Citizen Advisory Committee.
is there a second?
Discussion.
Second.
Seconded. My
Yes.
discussion is that, is there not a volunteer application process open to the public?
There is.
There is.
So is this,
It's
has
open.
that position been open and has it been vetted?
There's no limit to the number of positions that can be held currently. And so it's not a competitive position, if that
It's
makes
not
sense.
limited, there's not a certain number of slots available.
Although, isn't this an industry position?
Yeah, so
It's
our,
a- I'm sorry if I may.
Oh, no, please.
Yeah, it's an industry position and there's no limit on how many. We have plenty of open chairs under our bylaws. We did discuss that in the last meeting, actually, of if it ever got to a point where we had a full slate under our bylaws, at that point, we would make it more competitive.
Right, I just want to make
to
sure that
allow.
if there's spots open, then those, the public is aware of it and that we're not hiring or we're not promoting within without the ability for others to step in. And I just want to make sure that part's clean. I'm not objecting to you. I like you a lot, Jim. Jim, you're doing a great job. So, but I just want to make sure that we always stay clean.
The
Yeah,
website.
we have the same concerns.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
and I would offer that our website, we have expanded sort of that public process to improve the interview process with the CAC that they've been focused on. When we did our website redesign in 2022, we made an actual web page specific for the CAC where that application exists and expanded it to include the budget committee, in the sense where before the budget committee historically has only been identified by board members to join the committee, as we're now, there's an application process for someone to say, I'm interested, and let the board know that I have an interest for them to consider me to that. So
And then the board position too is that under the cities, that the city forwards a volunteer as opposed to a volunteer coming to LRAPA to be appointed.
right, if someone came to LRAPA to express interest in joining the board, which has happened, we direct them to the place that they live in the municipality and say that's a discussion for them.
No, that's great. And we're still using Spiderlink.
Yes. Uplink Spider.
Been working good. Uplink Spider, yeah.
Yep, yes, they educated me on what a cyber storm was, and it's not as cool as it sounds, but and some of the things that they're doing, because we had a little bit of some 404 bad gateway errors from the cyber storm,
Yeah.
and some of the things that they're working on to minimize how disruptive that can sometimes be to us.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be a stick in the mud today, but things come up.
Well, you were gone last month, so it's kind of saving it up, yes.
It was 2 months before. Yeah.
Travis, on the website, when there's like positions available for budget and the advisory committee, on the LRAPA landing page, is there a little banner or something that says we have positions open?
There is a banner that we could take advantage of to use that way. We haven't historically, but there's no reason why we couldn't start doing that.
You might want to do that just to publicize that we are looking for
Yeah.
people to volunteer. And of course, the city, I don't know what Springfield does, but I know the city of Eugene has their active recruitment, and they, do publicize that there are positions.
What we do, yeah.
Yeah, so.
I don't know if there's, I'm sorry to jump in. I don't know if there's a way to have a link, because like I really struggled trying to find somebody this year and wasn't successful. And so having a link where they would get my contact information if they were interested in my open seat or whatever my seat, or our city seat, I should say, for appointment, because like I said, I really struggled. The problem is most of the folks I know are already very busy. And so, I would love if there was some way to forward people interested from South Lane, to give me a heads up that they're interested.
Should they not be picked for LRAPA, then you can funnel them other directions.
Right.
Yeah, one of the new additions to our website for the budget, because we recognized this problem a few months ago of the challenge of finding volunteers who want to pay that effort, because it is time out of their day in the middle of a work day. So we created that application sort of page and process. So I can send that to you as a link that you could forward to someone to say, hey, if you want this, just, you can sign up here, so to speak. And the intent of it is not so much to, in the way that with the Citizen Advisory Committee, if someone fills out an application, it then goes to the CAC for them to consider. It's more just a list of interested parties. So that way we could present those individuals to the board for them to consider of who they might want to adopt to that position.
This sounds great.
And those ones applying for this, contact the CAC, they still go through the board.
Yes, so the CAC does a first review of it, and then they forward on to the board after the CAC has an interview process with the CAC applicant.
So does the CAC have the ability to cut an applicant, or do they forward all applicants?
They forward all applicants.
Okay.
Yeah, they provide a recommendation. Yes.
That's fine.
I think having a banner on there that would say how many vacant seats, because you do that with the budget committee and everything else. If the seat is vacant, it says vacancy. But on the CAC committee, all it says is there's 7 to 15 public people, and then every public health industry, it has somebody's name listed under it, so it almost looks like it's full.
Okay.
So
Add the vacancies.
yeah, so if you had something that said,
Empty's fine.
4 vacancies, please apply type thing, it might help as well.
Good idea.
Well, we got a little bit off on a discussion there, Jim, so, but
It's good stuff.
it's good stuff.
It was.
So, any further discussion about the motion second to approve reappointment of Jim, CAC? Hearing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Jim, for re-upping. It's much
You're
appreciated.
welcome. So as far as our next meeting, we don't have a task at hand. My understanding is that the board will be looking at updating goals. And that was suggested as a possible item for us to provide some input on.
When's your next meeting?
Yes.
When is your next meeting?
Oh, it's always the last Tuesday of the month, so that would be May 28th, right after Labor Day.
Great. Yeah, we'd definitely would appreciate any ideas that the advisory committee would have on LRAPA goals. You know, it's not board goals, but organizational goals.
Okay.
Right.
Can we
That covers
give
it.
a copy of 2022 as the goals, organizational goals as a starting base for?
Yes, I can send it. I think that what we'll do, depending on how discussion goes here and any direction provided by the board, presuming that that's a good idea, that's agreeable to the board. In preparation of the next meeting, sending out that information to the board, making them clear that this would be a discussion item we'd want to do at the upcoming meeting so they could be prepared with ideas.
Okay.
Coincidentally, they are listed in the budget book as well.
Like it equally.
And on the staff report here too. Also. And in the director's report.
We're trying to make them public knowledge.
Tell you and tell you again. Yeah. All right. Anything else, Jim?
That covers it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate the work that the advisory committee does.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Next item is dashboard report. Travis?
Yeah, so this is, for context, a dashboard report is a form that I will start by saying I have ideas of how this could potentially be modified or done differently, and then also open to input. The intent of it is to give the board a sense of at snapshot, sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the organization. I would say that based off my experience as a staff member at LRAPA, I don't necessarily know that in its function, it has completely served that to the degree that ought to be helpful. So ideas on improvements is something I'm certainly open to turn it into a tool set that does what its intent is. So each one of these are broken up into different groups, kind of going from green to red in terms of specific categories. So the purple text that you see on the right, that is things that are considered new since the last time the board saw this dashboard report. We share it with you in May and then again in October. So kind of starting from the top, ozone level, ozone season, we started our ozone season in May 1. That goes through September 30th. Also did send out a press release relating to ozone season beginning, trying to get some public health messaging on that. For compliance with the PM2 air quality health standards, no real additions there as the Eugene, Springfield, Cottage Grove, and Oak Ridge area are maintaining compliance. Watching wildfire season, of course, always carefully because that is our largest form of PM pollution in Lane County. Maintaining compliance with a 24-hour standard, same thing here, but something that is very notable is the EPA is lowering or did lower their annual standards, keeping the daily standard the same from 12 micrograms per cubic meter to 9 micrograms per cubic meter. In the director's report, which when we get to that, there's some graphs that I think will explain sort of where our air quality levels stand in comparison to those new levels. The next one here is our targeted airshed grant, continues to move forward pretty well. There's also a report that we'll be getting from Grace Kaplitz, who's with us to share on that. The program did submit a 1-year extension to our first targeted airshed grant. It was supposed to be done or finished by this November. We still have quite a bit of some funding left to do more home weatherization and other work. So extending that by a year will give us more opportunity to do that. Kind of on that third page, you can see some of the details of how many homes have signed up for their interest list, currently enrolled, homes that have actually received some interventions. Those numbers continue to climb, and they're climbing much faster than they were a year or two ago. So the program has really hit stride at this point, and that is really exciting. On the air toxics side, the next purple text we have there is on our long-term air toxics monitoring. This is a note to you. We did suspect or plan that over the winter of last year, we would have an update to our air toxics webpage to account for new data. Regrettably, there has not been the time resources to really hit that mark, but something that is important and that we prioritize and want to do. Also, we have successfully moved our air toxics monitor from Oak Ridge, which was there for a period of time, and it's now to Springfield's for January 2024. This is one of the benefits I'd say that Lane County or LRAPA brings to Lane County is without LRAPA and our leveraging of we'll buy the equipment, DEQ does the lab work, we're able to have 2 air toxics monitors here in Lane County. If it wasn't for that relationship with DEQ, we would only have 1 air toxics monitoring that would take place in West Eugene. So a benefit there. Yeah.
So how long was it in Oak Ridge and how long, I mean, are we giving it enough time to get a good sampling? I guess, I assume that's the case, but.
It was in Oak Ridge for a year and a half, and the intent of moving it there, which was kind of an interesting thing to do because air toxic monitoring is very expensive. There's only 9 of them in the whole state. And strategically, organizations or agencies want to put them in places where there's lots of people and there's also lots of industry. So you can get a sense of what are those hazardous air pollutants in the air. We made the decision, LRAPA did, to move it to Oak Ridge where there's not a lot of industry and not necessarily a lot of people, but there is a lot of wildfire smoke with no bias presented by industry. And so the intent was to put it up there for a season. It was up there for a year and a half. We were able to capture the 2022 wildfire season where the Cedar Creek fire was up there. Got an profile of what the hazardous air pollutant profile is of wildfire smoke beyond just particulate matter. Turns out it was benzene, I think it was somewhat elevated in that. Oregon Health Authority has been very interested in this data set, which we have provided to them to have a better understanding of it's not just Oak Ridge that's experiencing exposure to wildfire smoke, but all of us are more and more each season. And so beyond the PM pollutants, what else is within that profile? So that was an intent to get some data there, but it was an expensive resource and someplace we want to put where there are more people and more industry. And so now it is at Springfield, and appreciation to Joe for helping to arrange the, connect some pieces to get in a spot that works for us. So
Where's it located?
It's by Gateway.
The school.
Yeah.
The youth farm,
Youth farm.
actually, the
Oh, yeah,
like county youth.
with no cost, so.
So appreciate helping to find that spot for us.
All about connections.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next thing on here in purple is the Cleaner Air program. This is just an update of some of the Cleaner Oregon, I should say, progress that we have made with some facilities that are moving through the program. If there's specific questions, Max is here to provide a little bit more insight into that. Beyond that, the next purple is reviewing the board goals. Highlighted here that the last time the board assessed goals was in January of 2022. So I think that it would be a great time to revise those and improve upon them. A staff report later in this meeting is to have a discussion on when that might be a good time for the board to meet and look at that. The next item below that is on Title V in permitting and backlogs in general. And our Title V permits are less than the 20% of administratively extended, which is the goal that the EP sets for us, and we remain below that. In fact, at the moment, we have no backlog for Title V, which is a real great thing for our permitting staff to accomplish that goal and something that is remarkable. Improvement of compliance inspections and tracking. The update here is that we are in the process of hiring an inspector. We have 2 inspectors and field officers. Cassandra Jackson, she left us in February of this year. And so we are in the recruitment process. This week, we reviewed a first screening of candidates, and before too long, we should be identifying the person we would like to extend an offer to and bring them on board. An update here on the industrial rules. We are going to the Environmental Quality Commission in May, the end of this month, to bring to the EQC, which is essentially DEQ's version of the board, to have them pass the rule changes that our board passed a couple months ago so it can be implemented into the state implementation plan. And then the last one here on the staffing, a little bit more detail is that we had a permit writer who retired, Kelly, and we have posted her replacement position, and first screening of applicants will be at the end of this month. And then there is a HR director is currently out on medical leave, or finance HR director, you could say. And the executive director at this point has been filled, but now there is a public affairs manager vacancy. Filled. So, and then.
Can't do both.
I can, but it's, that fuse is getting shorter and shorter, so.
I would say there's probably not much left.
Yeah, I'm a benefit to maybe being young in the role is there may be a little bit longer fuse, so.
Well, we still all burn out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the dashboard report, as kind of a quick summation. Again, feedback or changes or how this information can be presented more clearly, I'm open to that. I do feel that the dashboard was maybe not as useful of a tool in helping the board really understand some of the ongoing challenges within the organization, and so improvements to it would be beneficial.
Well, I would encourage the board, you know, if anybody has suggestions, and I certainly have no objection personally if you proposing changes that you thought, you know, you think might be more useful, not only to the board, but also maybe easier, you know, for staff to prepare also. So we're open.
I would agree. I think you're gonna be the better folks to recommend the changes, because we don't understand the nuances like you do. And
Okay, thank you. And that's it for that agenda.
You know, to use the old military staff summary sheet, you know, you can't say it on one page, you don't know what you don't have a good handle on the topic, so.
It's interesting, the Lori, who I mentioned earlier that we brought in as a bit of a leadership coach for myself, and as well as help with some HR support and helping other people communicate with one another in a more productive way. Her perspective that she shared for me is the shortcuts you can take are good. And so reflect on those and make things easier on yourself and what you're putting together. So, yeah.
Well, she's certainly used to dealing with each city council.
Yeah.
No offense to Matt, but you know, it has its own challenges, so.
None taken.
Only in that,
Are you bad mouthing city council?
only in that there's a lot of information coming your way, and it's probably hard to, of course, hard to digest it all.
And that's it for that.
Okay. Next item is the capital improvement project, Lance.
Sure, I might just start by just continuing the discussion from the budget meeting and the 1.2, how much million that was in there. So the most recent cost estimate we had, the bottom line cost was about 800,000. So then they add a little cushion themselves to that and give us a range of about $1 million to 1.1 million. And then they suggest we add another 15%. So it's really to budget. The hope is that it'll be less than that. But that 1.2 million is kind of the real high range. But I guess as
The worst case scenario.
yes, kind of a worst case scenario.
Which you can typically bank on.
Yes. Yeah, that's the whole thing with construction, I guess. So, but as has been mentioned, well, you know, I guess you just go kind of into the first bullet point on the staff report is that our legal team has reviewed the documents that will go into the RFP and for the contract and made some changes. The architects gave us some documents and it's kind of just a boilerplate and it protects them more than us. And so the lawyers looked into that and kind of replaced a lot of those documents with our own or their own to protect LRAPA a little better. And so that's the phase that they're in. They're finishing up the construction documents so that it can go out for an RFP. And then when those come back, then the board will have an opportunity to see what ridiculous prices there are maybe or not and be able to approve or not approve that, I guess. So some of the other things we're working at in the meantime, preparing, hoping things will go as planned. We're looking into temporary office space. We've had meetings with LCOG and looked at some space there. We recently, Travis connected with Lane County and they have space in the bottom of their service building, you know, across from where the jury duty center is. And so that actually looks more promising. It's a fairly large space. A lot of staff could work from there instead of at home if they wanted to. And we could probably store a lot of our storage there because there's a lot of empty space. And so that is looking appealing. We're still working out details with them and going to make a visit over there. And then to kind of get ready for that, we were already in the process. We're due for kind of workstation upgrades. And so we made the decision to use laptops as workstations so that they can go back and forth, whether it's at home or somewhere else. And so it wasn't really an extra cost. The cost was already built into this fiscal year, but it's been a benefit in this project or planning for the project. And then, that last bullet point, we are kind of in the middle of trying to reorganize what everybody at LRAPA calls the G drive, the big hard drive, that everything, we store everything, most things on LRAPA. We're trying to reorganize that so it's more functional and we do more things electronically so that we're not all in the same office potentially. It'll make things easier for moving things around electronically and having to do as much paper transfer and stuff. So that's another issue. And then I don't know if there are any other questions. That's just kind of a summary. We'll try to do this again next month, and then the month after, hopefully we'll have some bids to present to you.
Any comments, questions?
No, that was me.
Oh.
I realized, I guess I realized like, well, that could be interpreted as me pointing at.
That's what I thought.
Raise your hand.
This, as Tim proposed, a little off of this, but on, in regards to, you mentioned many times, several times in that statement that we're not sure where people are gonna be working, whether they're gonna be at home or at work. And if we got these to make it easier to work with, and then you said home or work or wherever. And I'm starting to think now in the city, we have all our staff are back. Pretty much. And so I wanted to know, what is LRAPA's plan? We're building a new building and we're having space for everybody. So is everybody going to be back to work? Is that the plan?
The plan is that there will be office work that will be done. We have a remote work policy, but that remote work policy at the moment is requiring some component to at-home work or in-person, in-office work. There are an exception to that rule, but in general, in my intent, I think that especially in the situation where LRAPA is at the moment, working relationships are very important and those things are easier to build in an in-person space. And I think that those who have a strong preference to have some form of working from home, being open and agreeable to that, because the marketplace in general really has that as a standing point. But as far as taking an approach such as DEQ, which requires only 8 days a year of in-office work,
Wow.
I think that that's a stance too strong. And so in my mind, that there is a component where we will have work from home, but there is going to be a component of in-office work as well.
And right now, pretty much everybody comes into the office anyways, so we don't have a real strong, like, other places I've worked, there's been a strong opposition to coming back to the office, but it doesn't seem like that's present in our culture at our work, yeah.
And one of the things I'll say on the capital remodel project too, a driving motivator for that is, today we're meeting here in this space. When we have a public hearing for a source, we reserve the library to go have that, or it's just exclusively online, depending on the situation. So a motivator for the RAP capital project was recognizing where HVAC system needs to be updated. The carpet's kind of grungy, needs to be redone as well. And it's not really hitting our needs in terms of meeting spaces and accessibility to the public. So all of those items considered is where the initiation a couple of years ago saying this is where remodel would really be appropriate to us. But I do think that if we have a nice new facility and then everybody just worked from home, then why go through the nice new facility?
Yeah, I don't want to pay $1.2 million for people that aren't going to be there.
Yeah. And in my perspective, I think that there will be a component of having us be at work in office so we can build working relationships while still allowing flexibility for some remote work component.
Having lost 2 employees in the last 2 years to daycare issues, I think that's a big consideration. I think being able to work from home is actually important depending on the industry. I mean, for my work, it doesn't work at all because we're all paper. We're old fashioned and, so people literally have to be at work because that's where the work is. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a good balance. I think we need to have that option available. But I think there's no team building if there's no team.
Les, I have a question for you. On the RFP that goes out, are there provisions where if the bid comes in real high and it's, way above our budget, is there a way to structure the RFP so that there are, identify some components that might be optional or could be taken out without.
Flexible scope.
Yeah, without materially affecting the overall project.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find it out,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just kind of curious because I just worry, I mean, just as a homeowner, it's
Right.
kind of jaw dropping, what bids are these days, and you're probably,
Really?
yeah, you're probably.
Wow, that's a revelation.
No, it's not. And sarcasm aside, but we all know that costs are really high and unpredictable and depends on how busy people are. I've heard of people getting these ridiculous bids because contractors, it's just one of those, yeah, I'm gonna respond to you, but you really don't want to pay this much, so there's that concern.
We did have a discussion with our architects. This was when Steve was still here years, well, I guess last year. Wow, it's been a long year. On sort of this idea, and their perspective was that the size of our bids, there's going to be less of that sticker shock perhaps because it is of the size, as we're sometimes with the more smaller residential scopes. You can see essentially the work is all at this level and at this amount. And if you want our interest on this small project, you're going to have to bring the price up there for basically to buy our time. So when those conversations were taking place with the architects, is they said there will be some components of what the bids are at, but they don't see as much of that sticker shock for the size of our project that we're proposing.
I just want to just a comment aside too, because you mentioned kind of the big G hard drive. But Travis and I had a conversation not too long ago about all the paper records, some of which are very, very old that LRAPA has, and the plan for staff to consult with DEQ about what their records retention policies are, especially stuff that's 20 years old. You really need to keep that because it's very expensive to digitize that. I've done projects like that for federal clients, and it's very expensive to digitize old paper records. And I'd also like to just compliment Travis on some of his forward thinking about instituting electronic file management and having a very prescriptive file naming convention, which I guess doesn't really exist right now. And so I think those are some really good things from a management standpoint of being able to look at a file and have at least some inkling exactly what it is without having to open it. Very, increase the efficiency of the office and everything. So I think those are really, I appreciate you looking at some of those things that I think of probably no one's thought of previously or didn't act on. So it's all good.
And it's in hope to solve some pain points that currently exist.
Yes.
So.
Question, Lance, on the other capital improvement project, the parking lot, is that still ongoing?
It was all finished up.
Okay,
Next month, when you come to the building,
We haven't been
you
there.
go inside, it looks really nice.
Good.
So, yeah,
I
all
haven't been
the,
here for the last few months. so I
yeah,
haven't
all the
been there.
landscaping's done, the lot, at least the two of the lots that were asphalt have be paved. The back lot's concrete and it's been clean, but we still need to have it striped. But yeah, those projects are all taken care of.
The building contractor will pay heavily if they damage our pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah. it would-
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Stop by on the way home. maybe
Yeah,
take a
yeah.
look.
Okay, anything else on that topic? Any questions? Okay, well, I guess we're all gonna be looking forward to the bids. Okay,
Sort of.
yeah, sort of. They'll be eye-opening, sure. Oak Ridge Air Status Report, Travis.
Yeah, so Grace Kaplowitz, who is with Good Company Division of Parametrics, is here to share more of a delineated update or detailed update of our targeted airship grant.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you, board, for having me here today. I'm excited to share some updates about Oak Ridge Air. Overall, I'd say the program is going very well. It took some time to get underway amidst the COVID beginning and those early years of program development, but we're really at a great pace right now and picking up speed on hitting the benchmarks and milestones of the grant. So it's been a pleasure to continue working on, and I'm excited to share some updates today. At the top of the list are some coordination and project management reports. So I'm sure you're all aware of the Environmental Justice Government to Government grant that LRAPA was awarded by the EPA, and the team is all very excited to work on this as well and address some of the additional smoke and wildfire safety mitigation hazards in homes in the community. I think we're expecting that will begin over the summer or in the new fiscal year. So we're excited to get rolling with that. As Travis mentioned, we are currently awaiting to hear from EPA about extending the timeline for the grant by a year, as well as making some budget adjustments that will more accurately reflect the needs of the program and what's happening on the ground in the community. The Oak Ridge Air Team in the community has also hired an additional staff member in the last 6 months, and that's a new outreach coordinator. There's now, I think, 6.5 full-time staff at South Willamette Solutions, which is the main nonprofit implementing Oak Ridge Air in the community. And they're doing really great work, and that's really expanded the capacity and the efficiency of the program. And then we're also working now in partnership with Homes for Good, and we had a meeting with them this week. And we're working on coordinating the programs a little bit better so that their weatherization program can better serve Oak Ridge residents, and we can pair those funding sources to do more work in the community than Oak Ridge Air and the TAG grant can do alone. Speaking of home heating upgrades, we've crossed that 50 completed homes milestone, which is very exciting, and about a third or a little more than a third of the total homes that will be completed with both the TAG 1 and TAG 2 grants. And it's taken a while to get to this pace, but now we're completing, I would say, roughly 3 or 4 homes per month. And so we're on a very good pace to complete the rest of the homes and spend the rest of that funding by the end of the extended grant period. And we've included some photos of some of those stove changeouts and ductless heat pumps. I would also say that with this kind of larger number of completed homes, there's a lot more enthusiasm and excitement in the community, and a lot more of that word of mouth and people having testimonials and sharing about their gratefulness for the program. There's been a lot of process improvements and efficiency in the pre and post auditing. I don't know if you will all recall, but we had a third-party auditor that was part of the program for the first couple of years, traveling from Eugene to Oak Ridge, and that was a real delay in the process. And that auditor eventually left the program, and now the home heating upgrade coordinator is doing the audits as well. And so that's one way that the program is really streamlined, being able to get a new home into the program, do that pre-audit, get it done quickly, and then start working with contractors much more rapidly. And we're on our 7th cohort of homes. That cohort started in the first quarter of this year. And another process improvement has been the State Historic Preservation Office clearances. So for every home, that SHPO documentation has to be sent off, and those have been sped up as well. And we're getting faster approvals from SHPO. So there's been a lot of great efficiencies that have been able to increase these number of homes in the program and the pace that upgrades are being completed. I'm not going to run through all of the specific numbers unless anyone has any questions about those, but overall 53 homes fully completed, and then several more that have had the specific upgrades completed, and almost 550 that have filled out the interest form or applied for the program. We're also having great success with the chimney sweep voucher program. So 52 chimney sweeps have already been completed in the program to date. And we have a vendor second chance that is going up in the community and completing those. That's another great way to kind of spread and disperse the value of the program to more residents and help more people meet their needs and burn more cleanly when they do need to use their wood stoves. And a couple other small wins around having additional contractors available in the community and those after action reviews. So this is resident testimonials. Now that there's a bigger staff and some process improvements, those are being completed a lot more quickly, and we have a lot more testimonials. And it's really been very overwhelmingly positive feedback from everybody going through the process. And the speed that homes are completing is also a lot faster. We had some homes early on that started in 2020 in COVID that took a couple of years to finish. And now we're having homes that are wrapping up anywhere between like 3 and 6 months, depending on how complicated they are. So that's been really great to see. We've also had a lot of success with the community firewood program with our new firewood vendor, Brock's Woodlot. They've been running the CFP since August of last year, and they have increased the number of cords delivered and the sales for the commercial firewood business as well. And they're doing great work with equipment maintenance and repairs and have been a very strong partner to the program and are looking at other opportunities to continue to build and sustain that community firewood program beyond when the grant will support it. It was also exciting to see that the reader boards are all fully installed and complete. And now if you go into Oak Ridge in the community, you'll see them up and running and you'll see updates about air quality, about red, yellow, and green days and other events and opportunities at the fire station and at the schools. And that has been really successful. We've definitely had resident testimonials saying that they've come to events and heard about the program through those reader boards. And we're also gearing up for event season. So tree planting festival just happened last weekend, and there's a lot more great summer events coming up. The annual Wildfire Safety Expo will be coming up, and really good opportunities for Oak Ridge Air to continue to be in the community and spread more information. As well as the woodshed program has been successfully continuing on. 61 sheds have been constructed and delivered. And we have funding for approximately 150, so maybe a little less than halfway through that. But I think we've also increased kind of the pace and gotten a little bit more consistent with that program. And for the University of Oregon project, they completed their survey on understanding public perceptions of smoke and will be sharing a report and findings with Oak Ridge Air and LRAPA this month, as well as their detailed technical report. And then just a note that the Oak Ridge Westford Chamber of Commerce gave their People's Choice Award to South Willamette Solutions, which is the Oak Ridge Air and Southern Willamette Forest Collaborative nonprofit in the community. And it's been really awesome to work with them and see all of the success and the amount of expanding that nonprofit has been able to do, primarily through the work with Oak Ridge Air and other related grants and programs.
Anyone have any questions?
Not this, but that.
I'm not sure I'll take that.
Just a quick question in regards to those reader boards. Is it specific organizations that can input that, or is it strictly LRAPA? And can you just briefly describe what the parameters are as opposed to will you marry me message?
Yes, absolutely. And I know that Travis can speak to this as well, but I'll give a high level overview. So one of the reader boards is maintained by the city, and that one there is, I think there's an MOU, but there's certainly an agreement that LRAPA has full permission to post smoke related messaging on that reader board. So it's really the city and LRAPA or Oak Ridge Air that have permission. And the other two are owned and operated by the school district, and there's a similar agreement in place. So it's community related messaging that relates to community events and alerts and public information. And I think LRAPA has the right to kind of post information that is sensitive and timely and necessary and can override if there's a less important message that's on the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can expand on that. These are not reader boards that are owned by LRAP or owned by Oak Ridge Air in any way. These are resources that are provided to the community to kind of see what they would like to use it for, and that's the city and the school district. And we, through securing funding to bring that, just secured our opportunity to provide some of our messaging through that reader board, which can include, as you see in the picture, if it's a red, yellow, green Homewood Heating Day or promoting the Oak Ridge Air program. So these are community resources that are brought to the community, and our stake is having access to be able to put messaging on there that fits our programmatic
We're
needs.
not, or we don't have control, so to speak, there. We just help facilitate and we have limited access to it.
Well, I can log into the portal and I can hit send, and what I hit send to will show up on that reader board in our maintenance not maintenance, our memorandum of understanding. There's communication that's described throughout there. So if LRAPA is going to be uploading or removing a message, we are in communication with the city of Oak Ridge, the school district, vice versa. So we have the privilege to, but it's more of a making sure that we're communicating on those actions.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have any perspectives on things or?
It's great. And the access that they have keeps our people informed, because I used to catch the fire department not keeping up with the messaging. And with Travis, or LRAP, it's engaged. They come down pretty quickly, particularly when it comes to red days and that one.
And it's more to, seeing more eyes on it, saying, oh, that date on that message, that date has passed. And even though it might not be our message, maybe they would appreciate us kind of taking that off the docket because it's no longer that date. So, yeah, those kinds of helpful, I think, things work.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you for the update, and sounds like a lot of good work being accomplished, so.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time, and thanks to LRAPA for the excellent participation and partnership. It's been great working with you all, and we're excited to continue the partnership.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grace.
Okay, moving on, work session board goals.
Yes, so this is an item that I thought going through and pulling the board goals out of the archive, I guess you could say, adding them to the director's report, including them here on the staff report, putting them in the budget book, made it very clear that there's a little bit of an older date stamp associated with these, and many of those items are outdated. Some of those goals are ongoing and will always be ongoing items. But the need to reflect on what the board really wants LRAPA to be focused on from a goal-oriented approach, I think is appropriate. In the staff report, I describe an idea of, for one, asking for the CAC input on some ideas that they as a committee and may advise to the board, as well as opportunities to reflect on this. I think that a work session where we're able to not have to engage on some of the other board-related items, as those board meetings are very packed, could be beneficial. The August meeting, which typically the board does not meet in August, I think could be an opportunity to do some of this engagement. And as a work session, we don't have to have the public involvement component of it. They have to be open to the public. But we could arrange something where it's a gathering virtually or something that could be more work focused and oriented. So I just put this here as a discussion and direction to be provided by the board on how they'd like to proceed.
Comments from anybody?
So, I have a very important meeting in the Eagle Cap Wilderness that day. And so I won't be there. If I'm the only one, certainly, go forth, but, that is, definitely not a week I will be around.
Mine's in the Caribbean.
Where?
In the Caribbean.
Oh, nice.
Same week,
Nice.
same time frame.
That month. So,
Well, the option could be,
but I can move it around.
unless we have a lot to discuss at a regular board meeting, we, could have an abbreviated board meeting, say in September, and devote the rest of the time to, work session, if that's gonna work. I mean, August, I know is a pretty heavy vacation time for a lot of people.
I think that could work as well. Another potential idea too is receiving input from the CAC as a starting point, and then potentially refining on that could expedite some of that effort as well in terms of making the conversation a little bit more efficient.
Mhm. And there was some discussion also about the performance goals that we adopted per your contract is also a good jumping off point to expand some of those. Because those are not only your personal goals, but I think they're also organizational goals.
So then what might be as an idea here, taking CAC input, taking those goals and then crafting a proposal of what could be some new goals for the board to consider to make, and then review with the intent of September's board meeting, having a significant amount of time allocated towards this conversation. And hopefully with some of those work being done ahead of time could help that be a more efficient conversation.
Okay. That sounds good to me. How does everybody think about that?
I agree.
Matt, does that sound good to you? Okay, thumbs up. Okay. Well, let's proceed that way. Sounds like a good option. We wouldn't want somebody to feel guilty on vacation. That
Oh, I
they're
don't think
missing.
about you guys. I like you, but no.
Not that much.
Doesn't bother me one bit.
Okay. All right, is that enough direction, you think?
Yep, I have enough direction. Matt.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, moving on to director's report.
So the director's report is still the same format as presented last time. Some new additions though here that I think would be helpful to point out is something significant that's happened, which does not happen very often in any way, shape or form, is the new annual standards set by the EPA. So these two charts you see here on your board or director's report. The black line is what that old standard was, and the red line is the new one. The first one you see includes wildfire data, and the second one removes that wildfire data. So you'll note that wildfire continues to have a pretty significant impact on our air quality. Just as an aside, from my perspective, I do think that it's nice that the EPA allows us through an exceptional events request to essentially remove not all of the wildfire data, but basically enough wildfire data to bring everybody's air quality down to that red line. But it does ignore the fact that there still is significant exposure that all of us breathe from the fact that the wildfire smoke is in the air. And to that end, I see as something that will show up probably more in the goals as we review them, is those RAPA's continue engagement on the wildfire issue. Not so much from a how can we reduce emissions, because we don't have authority to go to the Forest Service and tell them what to do, but on programs or ways that we can provide opportunities for people to avoid exposure through access to HEPA air purifiers and other items. Yeah.
Just a quick interject is, and we thought or contemplated or have the ability to assist in fuels mitigation.
Yes.
I think that's huge.
I agree. And our EJ government to government grant does have money for that. One of the things that I think for a place like Oak Ridge, it's really challenging to do some of that fuels reduction within the city, because a lot of grant programs assume that the city has the financial capacity to just do some of that work. And so our EJ government to government grant has funding aside to do some of that work within places like city limits. So I agree completely that to what end we can engage through programmatic approaches to work on those items. And that's kind of what I mean by how else can we work on this issue?
Because I've got significant concerns of East Springfield because of the ice storm, just particular this year, as many areas, even in the Thurston Hills, have 4 and 5 feet of debris, wood debris that are on the wall or on properties up to houses. And it's not like, a lot of people don't understand what microclimate occurred during that ice storm in the Thurston Hills area, where there was thousands of trees lost, but the fuels, they're a huge concern. They're a big concern of mine still. Pretty much so. But I don't think we could ignore that or should ignore that.
Right. So it's a matter of where can we get funding to address that issue? And so I think LRAPA exploring opportunities to go after grants and do more things as described in our EJ government to government grant to support some of those items. Because fuel mitigation is the way to really work on this issue, as well as then too, when wildfire smoke exists, what are actions, what are resources that could be provided so people are not breathing the harmful pollutant that's in wildfire smoke?
Yes. Shouldn't be ignored, especially this summer.
We will see how this year plays out. Hopefully we'll luck out. Throughout the rest of the director's reports, is kind of the standards, items that are in there, which I do think these are good informational updates. Whether or not the board, has specific questions on it, these are public documents that are posted on our website, and I do think it's a good way to engage on that. One of the items, Mike, that you said would be nice to see is more on the enforcement action status report. So that still has not yet seen any changes from last month, but I just want to mention that it's not forgotten about on ways to improve that, incorporate those ideas in there. Something that is more notable here, that I'll point is kind of at the media interest and outreach. The State of the Air report, I don't know if you happen to have seen that, by the American Lung Association, rated the Eugene Springfield area as 4th on their list for the metropolis area that has the worst air quality in the nation. That is a metrics that the ALA every year kind of changes how they make that determination. This year, what they did is they said, okay, on the air quality index from good to hazardous, it's a weighted scale, weighting towards the worst air quality having more. So they counted up over the last 3 years how many bad air qualities we had, and then did their weighting to see where on the list we align. And so our last 3 years for the Eugene Springfield area, we had the 2020 Holiday Farm, the 2021 Middle Fork Complex Fire, and then the 2022 Cedar Creek fire, all contributing to that data. And again, emphasizing my point to where LRAPA might not have the ability to issue a permit to a wildfire on saying, hey, you must do these things and how you burn. I think there are other avenues we can engage in to try to address this problem more fully. So wanted to point that out there. Had a number of media interests as described kind of above based on that. And then throughout the goals that you see there, those are just some quick summations of efforts that took place or otherwise over the last month. I want to point to number 8 on funding source diversification. We were made put in the loop by DEQ that due to the governor's priorities and environment and climate being lower on their priorities, there's less of an opportunity for DEQ to ask for further support in the upcoming long session. And LRAPA's ability to participate in those requests is non-existent for the long session. So without us directly going to the legislature to say we would like more support, we will not receive that support from DEQ. And then, let's see, another one I want to point out as well on here is the item number, number 11, the regulatory engagement. So in March, the boards concurred with LRAPA submitting a public comment to the EPA on air curtain incinerators. The EPA published new rules and kind of did what the board asked. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily directly in response to that comment because the rules that we commented on are still being reviewed by the EPA. So they may or may not yet have seen our comment that we submitted, but either way, essentially what was being asked of the EPA to change, the EPA has changed that. So I wanted to point that out as well. And just more following up with Howard's comments last month of saying, try to make it more clear to the board where actions the board has taken is having tangible impact. So that's, and side of any questions. Oh, and then the last thing on the final page, I'm wanting to put more months on tentative upcoming board agenda items. We were only really looking 2 to 3 months out. And so I thought we should have kind of closer to a year out on there. So I expanded that to have more upcoming agenda items. And that's the director's report for any questions or comments.
Any comments, questions? Yes, well done. Yep, thank you. Very complete. Thank you. Okay, next item is board member and other service recognition.
Board member and Susanna. So today is the last opportunity we will have Joe Piscineri gracing us, as far as I understand it, with your leaving the city council position. If I understand that correctly.
December, aren't you? I go to the end of the year.
Oh,
Well, we're celebrating early.
we're celebrating early.
Frankly, I have been too.
Not to forgive me the bum brush.
Well, yes.
There's a lot of vacation in there.
Yeah, we're giving you this, so we don't see you again now.
That means I don't have to show up.
Yes. It's your choice to make, but we do have an expression of appreciation for your time here on the board, recognizing that your world has a lot going on right now at the moment. And wanting to just take a moment to say thank you for your time and appreciation
Did not
here
expect that at
on the
all.
board. So we do have this plaque here to offer to you.
Where's the camera?
Yeah. Right there.
Oh, thank you. Been on it that long?
How many years?
Oh, it says 2018, so
Yes.
not that long.
And a date that perhaps we'll need to correct the date on there. So there may be a part B coming.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
And at least a couple of those as chair, if not longer, right?
Yeah, now 3 years as chair.
3 years as chair.
Through
So,
COVID and through after Merlin had retired.
yeah.
Through Merlin, through that one, through.
I'm trying to remember. I think you and I are the only two that have been on 3 different.
Well, that's why you booted me off the block. You said you couldn't, you flat out said, I couldn't, I don't want to have anybody beat my 3-year run, so I'm gonna appoint Brian.
Actually, I was thrilled to have somebody else take over.
Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And with, our Springfield City Councilor, Betty Taylor. She was on this long time. You know, it had to nudge her once in a while to wake her up.
Yeah, Betty, she kind of, when I was 2 months into the job, had a press release that, I can't remember all the specifics, but she was very unhappy about it and sent an email blast to me with all of the Eugene City Council CC'd on it. With whatever it was that she was very upset with and what I wrote into my press release, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been an honor.
Thank you, Joe.
I get asked if I want to stay on it every year. So I've been saying yes. So that's something.
I'm glad for that, you know, there, you could always say the alternative, but you have chosen not to, so,
Oh, yeah.
and that's where the appreciation comes from.
Good work.
And then the other thing that was added here is a letter that I sent out to all the board, an expression of appreciation to Susanna, who is on medical leave. Christine and I actually had a meeting with her a couple weeks ago, more from like, hey, we have a couple questions from you. Can you provide us a little bit of insight into this? And she's doing well, still at home recovering, but because of her help in navigating the transition from Steve to myself today, I think it would be appropriate for the board to recognize that effort and express some appreciation. So there was a letter that was drafted to the board to see if it's agreeable for Howard to sign, and we could provide it to her.
Everybody okay with that? I don't think it requires a formal.
Yeah.
Motion. Absolutely. It was a difficult time, and so anyway, we definitely appreciate her efforts. All right. Okay, anything else? The agenda?
That was the last item.
Okay, well, we give you part of your day back on a very pretty day.
Amazing day outside.
So anyway, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, so moved.
So move second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for attending.
Bye, Matt.
Bye. Thank you. And congrats, Joe.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your, Joe, thank you for your service.
It has been an honor serving with you.
It has been. It has indeed. We don't always agree, but I appreciate your enthusiasm, and
No, the cool thing is.
I greatly appreciate your service.
And it's not over yet.
No, it's not over yet, but it's the cool thing, I mean, it's like, there's a good example is that Matt and I for sure don't land on the same lily pad very often. You know, as far as, totally diverse in many areas, but there has been a level of respect that in public service is absolutely required. I mean, if it's, you gotta have that or we just stand still. And so I have a tremendous respect for Matt again, and he shows it back. So this is a good example of really two diverse folks, but getting things done. And this is, I've been on the city council for 20 years and seeing this and being part of it is that I've got just a handful of folks that are in that realm that exercise that mutual respect and things really move forward that way. So I do say that. And look at that. I said that publicly, Matt. I can't.
All right. When do you want to go fishing?
Yeah. Actually, I got a date for September 17th out of the ocean, but we'll go fishing before that.
So Matt's going to quote you on your city council election and he agrees with go fishing.
You don't even need to quote him, he can play the video back.
Don't take that as an endorsement.
No, all good, all good. On that note, though, we are 13 days to an election. No matter how you vote, please do exercise your right and get out and cast your vote.
Oh, yeah. Good things.
Already done.
Yeah. Same here.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for your time today.
Thanks.
I remember, I don't even.